All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got the last one for the day. We're now halfway through the course, or over halfway, so well done on that. The last session, and we'll finish at 5:30. We will be doing a check as you go out the door today, so don't try and sneak out early. Okay, we are going to do a little silver check. All right, so hang around for that one. And we do have some announcements at the end as well that are important. The last session's on coaching professionalism and athlete welfare. We have Glenn Berenger's come back to do this. So Glenn is currently the Swimming Australia National Youth and Youth Transition Coach. That sounds good. Triple Olympic gold medalist, Olympic silver medalist in 200 breaststroke at Los Angeles. And then Georgia's got this massive thing here that she wants me to read. And it's, I know, yeah, but anyway, it's really small and I'm having trouble seeing it, but she's a sports psychologist who has had 15 years working with athletes, coaches and teams to enhance their performance. She is currently the lead performance psychologist for the Dolphins Australian swim team, assisting with performance enhancement strategies, culture and team dynamics and well-being. Throughout her career, Georgia has worked with amateurs, professionals, masters, Olympic athletes through her involvement with Australian women's water polo, Australian cycling and Australian beach volleyball. She likes romantic walks along. I'm joking. In her former years, Georgia has been a level 2 gymnastics coach and a former state level gymnast, diver and swimmer. So they're doing the talk, so sit back and enjoy. And I think you're starting off. No worries. Thanks, Georgia.
And we've also got Josh Smith joining us from River City Rapids. That's all right, it's all good. Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a bit bright, isn't it? Well, actually, we have got a few of you. Yeah, as long as everyone's near someone, because we're going to do a little bit of chatting, a little bit of sharing, because I know it's 4 o'clock and it's Friday afternoon, and we'll all be needing a beer after this. So let's work through this. Coach Personal Excellence. We've changed the title a little from professionalism because I think it's bigger than professionalism. It's about excellence as you as a coach, how you perform as a coach and how that impacts on the little people and the bigger people around you in terms of performance and well-being. In terms of my involvement with the Australian swim team, I'm working closely with the high performance coaches, having many conversations about wellbeing and self-care, particularly leading now into Rio. But I thought I'd share with you a comment from one of our high performance coaches of his perspective of what it's like at the top level. He said, being a high performance coach and being invited to be a team coach on the Australian swim team is an honour, don't get me wrong. But there are a lot of responsibilities that go with it. Not only do you continue with the morning and afternoon training that is already opposite to your family and friends' work lives, but now you need to have daytime meetings with support staff, committee members and athletes. You also begin to realise that the fantastic opportunity to be on the Australian swim team and travel to an international event means that you are away from your partner and children for at least 6 weeks per year, and when you return from a World Champs and you need some recovery time, there is none. The club needs you, the wife needs you, the kids need you, the backyard needs you, and everyone considers your trip was a holiday. Now, I'm sure that's not just for high-performance coaches. I'm sure that relates to all coaches. But I guess it's nice for you guys to see, particularly doing your silver coaching course, that it goes all the way through. Everyone experiences it. So, what do we do? Oh, hang on, I'm going the wrong way. Oh, sorry, that way. So why is it important to look after yourselves? I'm going to need some volunteers to help me show you. So I need, for my little demonstration, I need one person who's going to be an athlete. Come on. Beautiful, come on out, great. So I've got an athlete. Now I need you to hold this cup because this cup will demonstrate life, fullness or emptiness, confidence, energy, all of those kinds of things that carry us through our day. I need a parent because every coach has to deal with not just one parent but a million parents. Can I have a parent? Great, come on. Excellent. I need a president of a committee. I'm sure that was you, Matthew. Great, you're the president of the committee because there's always one of those. I need, who else do we have? Oh, just another general parent. because we'll have millions of those. Great, come on through. I'm not going to bite you, it's going to be fine. So who have I got in the end? No. What's your role in our role play here? You're an athlete, a parent, president, another parent. Great. And then I need a committee member, probably the competition convener, who's typically harassing.
Phil will do it.
Phil. Thanks, Phil. You're a legend. Lucky Phil on a Friday. It's all right, we'll keep you awake. All right, then I need a peer, because hopefully every coach has a peer who has a bit of energy that you'd relate to and connect with. Come on, this is like the good job. This is the good one. What are you doing, people? Come on. Hello. Or you could just put your hand up and come out here. Great. Excellent. Anthony, thanks. All right. So here's me, the coach. The question is, why is it important to look after yourself? Because as coach, and I'm sure you already get it, here I am, and I've got to give to the athlete, right? And then I've got to give to the parent. Oh. Then I've got to give to the
president.
Very politely. Then I've got to give to the
Other parent.
and then I've got to give to the
Committee.
and this is what happens to us. And I say us because I've been a coach as well. I know the feeling. So your cup gets low. And your cup only gets low if you don't keep refilling. And so today what we want to talk to you about is how do you keep refilling this and potentially using peers who are also refilling who might, help you. Don't use all yours. Good. Who might help you refill. Now, I'm not asking for sympathy from my peer, because sympathy would mean he would pour it all in and make me feel better and he'd be empty, right? That's not the idea. The idea is to share the load. Bit of empathy, bit of learning, bit of peer perspective. Make sense? The water is fine. You may drink it. Thank you for your support. Give them a bit of a clap for helping out. So, make sure I face it the right way. So here are a range of issues that at the high performance level, coaches have indicated they significantly impact on their lives if they don't look after themselves. So these are the consequences. Family and work issues, relationship issues, club responsibilities, sleep strategies, all of those kinds of things. So I'm going to give you only 2 minutes and 23 seconds, because I've got my watch on. No, I'll look on here. 2 minutes and 23 seconds to chat with your partner. If you don't have one, make a new friend. Chat with your partner about what would be your top 5 consequences of not looking after yourself. On your marks, get set. They might be different to this. Go.
have this entire list, which one do you think is the most significant impact on everything else? I don't care how cool you are, how tough you are, how masculine you are, how feminist you are, you need a minimum of 6.5, 7 hours sleep a night. And I'm talking good quality, not broken 3 or 4 times. If you're not getting that, you need to get that stuff in order. And the reason we don't get that in order is because the brain is ticking and ticking and ticking and ticking. We've got to find ways to switch off. I know coaching is important. I know my work is important. But we're not curing cancer. No, we're not finding NASA. We're important to other people, but at the end of the day, if we're not in fine form, we can't deliver the people that we're coaching to the brain. So you take your share. I'd like to invite Glenn up to share with us his story or stories, or whatever he's willing to share. Do you want to share, or you want to stand and talk and walk?
Oh, no.
Stand and talk. Let's ask Glenn to share how did he bump into the issue of looking after himself, and hear his life story.
I'll tell you what, this is a really dangerous precedent to set. To let me stand up here and talk unfettered for however long okay. George asked me to talk about this because I suppose in a lot of respects, or in every respect, I've been in exactly the same situation that everybody in the room is in terms of coaching. I've come through the age group coaching system in this country. I've worked at a state institute program. Some of you may or may not have done that. And then as my career progressed, I ended up coaching at the AIS in Canberra for a couple of years. And probably what I found, and probably didn't realise at the time, is with that increasing maybe level of coaching in terms of the standard that you're coaching, also comes an increasing level of stress, and sometimes you can't recognise that in yourself. And for me personally, it was probably borne out, particularly when I went to the AIS, because I'd been coaching in a state institute program for a long period of time. At the time that I left, I think the program had probably had enough of me, and I'd had enough of it. I'd been there sort of 10 to 12 years. Opportunity came up to take a position at the AIS as one of the senior coaches there. I only went with a couple of swimmers, and the idea essentially initially was for me to go with a couple of swimmers that came from Adelaide with me to Canberra, look after them through to the trials, and then reassess which swimmers I'd be working with from that point on. But that changed really quickly within probably, actually even before I got to the AIS. I was due to start the beginning of 2003. And about 3 or 4 weeks before I got there, the then director of the Institute, Michael Scott, gave me a call. And he said, I'm just going to let you know that our former head coach here has resigned, and he won't be there when you get there. And I thought, oh, that's interesting news. So I've rocked up, and I'd been there for a couple of weeks, and then for whatever reason, a number of the athletes that the coach had been working with within the program approached me about coaching them, and one of them happened to be Petria Thomas. I think she might have been one of the first ones, but I'm not quite sure about which order it happened. And I didn't really have say in that initially because I was just coming in as a first-time coach. So our acting head coach there, Pierre, called him up. He was overseas, and I said, these swimmers are approaching me. What do you think? And he said, yes, I'm okay with that. You can take them on. And that in itself was good, but I'd gone from maybe taking on reasonably successful at the upper end of age group swimmers in the country, some international swimmers through South Australia as well, to taking on some of the best swimmers in the world. One of which who hadn't been in the water, and that was Petria for about 3 or 4 months when I took her on. Within a few weeks, she hurt her shoulder. Again, dislocated her shoulder, so she had an operation, had 12 months out. And then eventually, 6 months out, and then eventually she got back in, started to build up, and quickly realised that once she picked up a level of performance as a level of conditioning, that there was going to be a fair bit of pressure on her to perform, and me accordingly taking on one of the best swimmers in the world to perform as well. And I think probably the thing that sort of, looking back at it, stuck out in my mind, I didn't really pay that much attention to it at the time, was that at that particular point, the AIS had never had an individual gold medal winner in swimming at the Olympics. And Petria, after the selection trials in 2004, was ranked number 1 and went in number 1 into the competition. And It'd been a gradual build-up of expectation and pressure, and actually, to be honest, I thought I was coping with it pretty well, except that I'd been away at the trials. We had a fairly tumultuous week, and if any of you can cast your mind back to 2004, I was looking after a couple of other swimmers. Sarah Ryan was one, and the other one particularly was Craig Stevens. And if you remember what happened with Craig at that meet, that rather fast swimmer by the name of Ian Thorpe fell in the 400 free, and then we had the decisions about whether Craig was going to swim the 400 at the Olympics, and all that sort of played out during the week and beyond as we led into the Olympic Games. But I probably realised that I was not coping as well as I thought with the build-up of the stress and the expectation when I came home from the selection trials. And we had a great week. Everything went really well. 3 swimmers got onto the team, but I came home and I had a young child, I had 2 young children in the house at that particular time. One of them was my son, who was having, at that particular stage of his development, night terror, so he'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night. And I remember quite clearly, because I think it's the only time it's ever really frightened my wife about me personally, is he started screaming in the middle of the night and I was ready to strangle him. And I don't mean that in a literal sense. I was just so wound up that he started screaming, and all I wanted was peace and quiet off the back of the trials. I just wanted nothing, and this kid was screaming and I couldn't control it, which is what I like to do, is be able to control things. And that was at that particular point that I realised I probably needed to have some strategies in place if I was going to go through the Olympics, which I was, because I got selected as a coach on the team, to be able to cope a lot better physically and mentally with the stresses that are involved. And sometimes we don't think about that until we're pushed into a corner. And I didn't even see the build-up come, but then I'd realised that I was that wound up that a little thing like that had set me off completely, which is completely against my normal level of behaviour for anyone that knows me, mostly. So that's the first part of the story, and that's probably as far as I'm going to go at the moment, because Georgia wants me to talk some more later.
Back. Thanks, Barry. I think it's nice to hear a real story and see that actually it ticked a few boxes of quite a few of these areas, which is pretty important. And the interesting thing for this is these are the consequences of us not looking after ourselves. But what I'm interested in is, what are the symptoms? So what are the red flags that remind me that I'm not looking after myself? And Glenn, keep thinking about this, because I'm going to come back to you on that for now. So what are the red flags that remind me that I'm not looking after myself? So I'm going to give you, again, 2 minutes with your friend. Hopefully you've made friends by now. To share with each other, what are some of your red flags? What are the things that you know, oop, yep, I'm getting a little bit off track here. On your marks, get set, go. Give me 2 seconds. All right. Okay. Lots of talking, which is great. Hopefully it's on topic. Barrow, can I invite you back up to the stage to share with us, if we fast forward to now, based on your years of experience and wisdom, not saying that you're old, can you, this
No
isn't
hugs
being
for you.
videoed, is it? It's being videoed, whoops. Barrow, can you share with us, what are your red flags now? What are the things that you know are your little indicators that you need to slow down or look after yourself?
Probably the main things for me would be, I know that if I drift away from exercise specifically, that has to be an important part of my routine. I've got to make sure that I provide time for me specifically. Along the lines of what you were saying earlier, is that you tend to give lots of stuff to other people and not necessarily have some for yourself. And it's the great description I've ever heard about coaching specifically, whether you're male or female, probably doesn't really matter, is that you spend more time bringing up other people's children than your own. So for me, it was a big rub, not having that family time and devoting a lot to the coaching side of things. And I always found that particularly hard when the kids were young. So it's probably a combination of those things, but I know now that if I get unfit and I start to get overweight and unhealthy, that I don't respond in a good manner in terms of the way I would like to be personally and the way I would like to coach. So I don't make good decisions necessarily if I drift too far the other way. So unhealthy lifestyle normally means unhealthy me, unhealthy brain, and not necessarily being able to do the job to the level I want. So being reasonably fit for me and having exercise as part of the routine is really important. And I know it's digressing a little bit, but we're working pretty hard with some of the new coaches that are coming onto the Olympic team this year for exactly those reasons. There's a big microscope on them, on their personal performance and the performance of the athletes they're looking after. They have to take time to look after themselves if they're going to be able to do a good job in those circumstances. So that's probably the main thing that I've learned. Unfit, unhealthy, normally is when the stress levels start to build.
Can anyone else relate to that? A few nods. Great, thank you.
I'm excused?
Yes, you're excused. Thank you, that's great. So here's just an example of some of the broader common red flags that people experience. So some of your more physical symptoms, some of your more memory-related symptoms and thoughts, some of the emotions that can come. I overheard a few people talking about that frustration, angry. Mine's patience. If my patience gets shorter, I know I'm not looking after me. And then engaging in behaviours that typically are not you. So there's some typical red flags. Often, as I said, a lot of these come back to lack of sleep, which significantly impacts everybody. So it's really worth having a look at how you can have a positive impact on your sleep and come up with some routines that work. And like Barrow said, that's something we're really looking at the high performance level at the moment. As some of you may know, for Rio, for the Olympics, we're racing, nighttime racing for finals commences at 10 p.m. So we'll be racing 10 p.m. till 1 a.m. Hopefully getting back to the village and commencing sleep at about 2:30, 3 a.m. depending on media and drug testing. So we're trying to encourage people to have good sleeping habits that will take them from 3 a.m. till at least 9 a.m. for heats to commence at 1 p.m. So again, it's possible, and through some of the camps that we've held, people have been able to do it, which shows that if effort's put into creating a good sleep routine, people can do anything. And shift workers do it. So it's just a matter of working out what works for you and prioritising it. One really interesting thing for me that comes up often about excellence, wellness, comes in mental health, comes in mental illness. And there's a lot of talk at the moment in society around mental health, but very focused on mental illness. So I wanted to just share with you our view within Swimming Australia about the wellness continuum, as opposed to, oh, you're feeling sad, you have a mental health problem. For me, wellness sits just like the physical as a continuum across a long spectrum. So at one end, we've got looking after myself. So mentally, if I'm mentally looking after myself, which always sounds odd because if you think of the word mental or mentally, there's this common assumption that there's something wrong. But all we're talking about is a brain. If you're keeping a healthy brain and are keeping a healthy mind, you're at this end of the continuum. And that means you are happy, you are frustrated, you're connected, you're angry, you're disappointed, you're sad, you're content. You're actually experiencing all the emotions that we were born with. Unfortunately, and this is what you're going to face as coaches and I face every day as well, our young people through society and media are being taught that the only way to live and the only way to be mentally healthy is to be happy. If you're not happy 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, then there's something wrong with you. That's not the case. That's not life. But honestly, if you look at things like sometimes even our water bottles, sparkling mineral water, live happy. Like, gee whiz, there's subliminal messages everywhere that we must be happy, and we don't. And it's okay to not be happy. It's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be sad for a little while, because if we're sad, we're actually experiencing life. But as we come down the continuum and we start not looking after ourselves, that's when you'll experience feeling more worried than usual, more pessimistic than usual, more irritable, more withdrawn. Now we're heading down the continuum. And that's your red flag. And that's hopefully where we can stop ourselves and our young people that we're working with to bring them back up the continuum. You know, we don't need to be worried about all of this stuff. No, we can just be a little bit anxious about this or a little bit stressed about this, and you know, we can work through these things. But when we don't look after ourselves and we don't seek help, then we move into the end where we're talking about mental health problems. Just like if we have a sore ankle and we don't look after it, eventually we might have an injury. So from this end, that's like brain health issues. We've got anxiety going on to an extreme. We've got depression going on to an extreme. We've got substance abuse. Okay, but all of this is the continuum of wellness, is the continuum of mental health. We all fit on there, and we all fit on there because we've all got a brain. But unfortunately, the way even the high school systems work, our children will learn all about their body right up to typically about here. Maybe even with the face, but we don't actually get taught about our brain. So this is just really important to remind yourself and kids that it's okay as long as we're looking after ourselves. So let's just dip in and have a look at some of the research that we have now about the percentage of Australians with a common mental health condition. And this is, we're talking down that end of I haven't looked after myself and I haven't sought help and I need some professional help. The three common areas are substance abuse issues, or disorder, they sometimes get called, depression and anxiety. Okay, they're the three common. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to chat to your partner about which one do you think is the most prevalent. The most prevalent. Forget about male, female, just which out of those three is the most prevalent. Time starts now. Pencils down, hands on heads. Raise your hand if you think substance abuse. Good. Raise your hands if you think depression. Ooh, good. Raise your hands if you think anxiety. Ooh, good. And the winners go to anxiety. Now, why do we sometimes think depression over anxiety? Well, I know this is being recorded, but not many pharmaceutical companies have great drugs for anxiety, but they do for depression. And therefore, they can be promoted very well in terms of getting a message out. Hence, the message that we learn is that a lot of people have depression. Now, interestingly, we find depression is the next, and substance abuse is actually in the midst there. So it is interesting to see, and it's interesting to see the different percentages. But anxiety is the biggest. And anxiety is probably the biggest because if you think about it, we typically become overwhelmed or stressed, which are words that could fit in there with anxiety. We become overwhelmed, become stressed. If we don't deal with it, it eventually will lead into depression because I'm stuck and I can't do anything and I'm hopeless. So anxiety is a really important one to deal with. Now, for you guys as coaches, you need to be thinking about yourself in terms of life anxiety, let alone performance anxiety. So what's going on in life that might be making me feel a bit anxious, overwhelmed, that I can manage, and what's going on when I come to competition and my kids are performing and I'm sweating and I've got sweaty hands and I'm chewing gum like this and thinking that they don't notice it, but they do. So just being mindful of all of those things. So what can you do? Well, share with me, what can you do? What are things you can do to ensure you don't get down that end? Sleep? Try and find some balance? Sorry? Talk to someone, yes. Actually, you know, that's a really good one. And I'll admit, because I'm a pretty open book, I talk to someone a lot. Now, not too much, but after every competition, when I come back from a major meet, I have a 2-hour appointment with my therapist because I need to download. I could load it on my husband, but then he kind of gets overwhelmed with it and starts thinking, oh my God, what kind of job do you have? Why would you do that? Why do you put us through having to be without you for 6 weeks and then you come back and you're exhausted? No, I tell someone else about all that. Get it off my chest, feel a bit lighter, and then come back. So, you know, it's worth contemplating for those of you who do go away for meets or you've got school swim meets and all of these things, how can you plug into someone who can just hear you? You know, it doesn't have to be a therapist, it doesn't have to be a psych, it doesn't have to be a counsellor, it could just be a peer over a coffee or a juice. You know, it could be anyone. Sometimes it's really helpful to just let that stuff go with someone who doesn't even know you. So yes, talk. Any other ideas? What can you do? What can you do? What can you do? Meditation, exercise. People are listening. This is good. Holiday, yes. Set boundaries, yes. Particularly with the parents. Find a new job. You've got to have a plan. Yes. Yes. Absolutely, yep. Don't avoid the conversations with parents. Set the boundaries, let them know how you operate, feed them enough information, and hopefully they stay at the right distance. And I'll say that from a parent perspective, because if I think of myself as a parent of a child at school, the teachers provide me just enough information for me to have an idea of what's going on. Whew, I don't need to bother them. I know the overview. You know, so think about how much do you give and take. Really important. I'll come back to Glenn's point though about setting yourself a routine, like having something set. Because I guarantee you, if I gave you a timetable, a blank timetable, Monday to Friday, 5 a.m. to 7 p.m, and I asked you to start filling out your timetable, guaranteed you would all start putting in the swim times first. Guaranteed you would not put in your exercise first, your meditation first, your therapist catch up first, your friends catch up first. Yeah? Just because we love putting people... I mean, that's why we're attracted to coaching, right? Because we love helping people. We can't help people if we're not helping ourselves. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to stand up. You need at least 6 people to your group. And in that group, you're going to say this to your group. My red flag, pick one of them. My red flag is impatience. If I know I'm impatient, I'm in a bit of trouble. And I'm now choosing or going to make sure I'm doing such and such. So for me, I'll share with the whole group, my red flag is impatience. And I'm now going to walk 30 minutes a day at the start of the day and put myself first. Get into groups of 6. Go. Rightio. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for engaging and sharing. Looks like a fair bit of conversation's going on, which is great. Okay, so curious, put your hand up for me if you've shared that kind of information with pretty much a stranger, because I'm sure there's a stranger in your group, if you shared that with a stranger before. Yeah, not many, hey, only a few. So pretty cool that if you can share that little bit of information with a stranger, you can probably share a little bit more with a mate, probably share a little bit more with a partner, maybe share even a bit more with a therapist, depending on where you need to go. So just be mindful of what you need. Now, it's been brought to my attention and reminded me that, you know, this can sometimes be seen as nice and warm and fluffy. Oh, if I just go for a run, I'll feel a bit better and the whole world will be a bit happier. But there are consequences, just like there are physical consequences if you don't look after your body. There are mental consequences, and then mental consequences can impact on physical and vice versa. So we're fortunate enough that Popey has agreed to jump up on here and share his story as well, just to reiterate the importance.
It's like getting up on the stage, that's all. It's been a while.
And can you also share what you have learned and therefore now putting in place for
Sure,
yourself?
absolutely.
Thanks.
Some of you might be aware I got end up with leukemia last year and end up off the deck for about 9 months. And sometimes we see this stuff and we hear about consequences, but we really don't walk out of the room and do something about it. And it won't hit you now when you're in your 30s or 40s. I'm still in my 40s. Just joking, I thought I'd get. But it really hits you later on. It's sort of like the law of accumulation. The stress, the demands, the not exercising, the not looking after your diet, it gets you later. And so I don't think that you can just get away with it because, I mean, you know, I saw Ian Finlay out there earlier on. He was an Olympic coach who coached a world record holder. And I don't think he's got long. And you don't want to get to that point when you're facing death where, am I going to get out of this? And I feel proud to be back here in the Coach Association and being involved, and I was very fortunate. But the thing I changed above everything was setting boundaries. And I was pretty good with boundaries, but probably I thought I was invincible. And that's the thing, you think you're invisible, you know, invincible, that you can just get away with this stuff. I got on a special diet, I got my nutrition right, which I thought I was pretty good with. I used to stay at the pool every day because, you know, I lived quite a distance from the pool, but now I train and go home throughout the day. It's made such a difference, that simple change. I've always said that once I get home at night, I have a clear boundary that is it, I don't do any work at night. And you've got to set boundaries. I hear a lot of coaches that are finishing relationships or not too good. And one of the consequences is because they haven't got boundaries. Because this swimming arena can pull you in. And it's great to be a part of, but, you know, it's so demanding. And the ways that, you know, the number of times you're away. So really make some decisions for yourself of setting some boundaries, some clear guidelines of what I need to do. Because, you know, you don't want to get in my situation. I'm not saying that's the reason, the only reason. But, you know, when you have 9 months of chemo and you can't even walk from here to that door, you lost 20 kilos and you're like an old man, it makes you think about other things. So I'm happy to talk to anybody that might want to share with some of the stuff that they might be dealing with and how to deal with that. Because for me, you know, one of the things I want to help coaches today is, and I've got on a few coaches' faces here, even over this weekend or at Nationals, to sort of say, look after yourself. Look after yourself. Because if you don't, it'll get you. So anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Popey. Thanks for sharing. And I think, you know, it's a really good point for all of us because everyone in this room today can make a difference going forward because you've heard this and you've heard Popey's story. And if you don't make a little bit of a change, then you're not helping all of us. You know, and if you don't start setting boundaries, then you're not helping all of us. Because if we all set a boundary, then the next people that we interact with realise that boundaries are important and they start to set boundaries, you know, and we create a ripple effect. So have a think about what you're going to do and stick to the thing that you know works best for you. Last but not least, we've invited Josh to come and share with us. Josh, see if I can remember. third place in the 50 metre under 12 breaststroke at Brisbane Metro. Woo! I don't even think I got that far, Josh. Come on down. Josh is from River City Rapids. He's in the midst of the performance coaching course through the AIS Melbourne Business School, and is going to share a little bit about his coaching excellence journey. Thank you. You
Thanks,
might want
Georgia.
the little thingy, it's the top one.
All right. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'll give you a bit of a background on, not on me, but I'll just skip straight to the course because there's actually two of us that are on the course through SAL, Damien Jones and myself. So we're invited to apply to go on this course, and it's called the Performance Coaching Course. So the names are a bit don't really describe what it's about. So we applied to get on this course and put the applications in, and we're lucky enough that we got picked. And going through it, before we got there, we were thinking, I was talking to Damo and said, like, what's this course going to be about? Is it going to be like technical course and inputs and things like that? And it's got all these other different sports coaches. It's actually not about technical, not about swimming specifically. The first thing they got you to do for 3 days before we went down there is you do have all this profiling. They undertake all this profiling with you. So they give you all these tasks, set you down at a computer, set really tight timelines, and you have to respond to all these challenges, and they see what comes out of you when you're under pressure. So they call it your best self is when you can manage all this stuff really well and you're relaxed, and they call it your worst self is when you're reacting really negatively. So you get this big readout, and it shows the behavior that's eminent when you're pushed and pressured really, really poorly. So we got these scores back, and I got 98% on something, and I was like, this is awesome, 98%. And it was 98% argumentative when I'm pushed. So that's out of like 15,000 people they've surveyed. So I think I was like, yeah, quite up there in that. So when they identify, they call them derailers, identify derailers. When you're pushed, this is what happens. So what happens is I had 2 or 3 of those. I think it was argumentative. I wasn't volatile, something else. Argumentative and avoidant. So I either avoid you or argue with you, which aren't good traits for parents, athletes, and people you have to deal with. So that's a limitation for my coaching performance. So then they set development pathways for you to kind of like little strategies and different thinking models for you to circumvent this and set boundaries and things like that to take a bit of the pressure off yourself. So it's kind of applying those strategies in order to least expose or spend the least amount of time in your worst self and the most amount of time in your best self. And all these things that Georgia and Glenn and Ian have talked about are very important to that, because if the rest of your life falls apart while you're trying to coach and you're so involved with that, your coaching eventually will suffer and your practice will suffer. And I've seen that a little bit over the last probably 3 or 4 years. I went so hard into it. And you get, like, I didn't even know what anxiety was when I first got it. And by the time you're starting to get it, by Friday, you're worrying about things that you can't control and you're just completely burnt out and you don't know why you're tired. And it is a real thing. So the first thing I did when I went down to this course, the first lab, is, oops, wrong way. The first thing they asked us to do was write down your coaching philosophy. So your coaching values are in there. Kind of maybe your career goals interwoven in there, but it's a philosophy to guide you for your coaching. So everyone's different. It's what you offer, what you expect, what you give the athletes, what they give you, and it's something that should guide your practice. And when they asked me to write this, I was like, oh, this is easy. And they said, you can have an hour to write this. Go off in a park and write it. And I said, oh, this is easy. So just scribbled it down. And then I was like, well, that's really lame. And I don't have the lame ones actually, but I should have saved them. But it was quite poor, and I was like, I can't define this. I can sit down and I can't actually physically, like on paper, written, define what my coaching philosophy is. So to put a bit of pressure back on you, I'd like you to write down your coaching philosophy. You don't have an hour; you've only got 2 minutes. So due to time. But have a go at it now. You can do it in groups of 2 if you like, but just have a little bit of a go. What are your values? What are your career goals? And how can you put that in a short little phrase? Doesn't have to be long. And it's something that even if you don't get it finished now, I think it's something I'd encourage you to do because it guides what you do. Yeah, so have a go. keep about a minute left. I'll keep time like everyone. Okay, we'll wrap it up there a little bit. Just before, you don't know, I'm not going to ask anyone to share it because it is quite a difficult thing to do succinctly and to get it all there together because there is a lot there. But just read through yours now and see if you've written anything about you in that philosophy. If it mentions you or if it mentions your what your aims are in there or what you provide. You don't have to, or maybe we'll do a raise of hands. If it mentions you in that inside that philosophy that you've written, put your hand up. You being the coach, or it's just reflective of your philosophy, or if it's, so I'm trying to get whether it's coach centric, centered on you, or whether it's focused on an athlete. Who's just got it as an athlete focus, what athletes need to do? About 50-50. That's better than I thought. When I had a first go at writing this, mine was completely about an athlete and athletes. I just had it just there. None of it was based upon me. None of it was supporting me. None of it was about what my development was going to be. And that's not good because I'm thinking about a group of athletes and I'm thinking about what they need rather than what I need to continue to develop to be a better coach. I'll put mine up now. So mine is, it's about 7 points, I think. So toughness development is greater than talent. Honest self-analysis for coach and athlete is the only way to build the complete athlete. Points of difference in the program are essential to being the best. Respect effort above all else. The greatest people in the world learn to work hard and persist. Young people do not need to fully commit to the sport. However, they need to fulfill their commitment. So that took me about 3 months to do that. I'm a bit slow, but that's it. My original one was pretty shocking when they break it down for you because they say, well, you're not mentioned here at all. It's all about, mine was all results based. It was all competition based. It was pretty bad. So that was one of the powerful lessons I got out of the course, that I probably needed to start focusing on my development more and less about the athletes in front of me. Obviously not everyone has that experience, but I'd encourage you, even before I did this course, I went and visited Sykes and got not help, but thinking models and ways to do things. And all the models that I've gotten off this, things like De Bono thinking hats and things like that, are all readily available. Have a little bit of a look because there are these models that can help you frame things a little bit better and more effectively, that weight things towards your development rather than just being solely athlete focused. And I think when you find you weight things towards your development and what you need to become a better you start to build the processes of your coaching and they become more effective rather than focusing directly on the results that are outcomes from your athletes. I think that's a long-term way to be a sustainable coach because you're investing in yourself and then through that you're investing into your athletes and all your future athletes. Where if you invest your energy completely solely on an athlete, that's just a short-term result. And when something goes wrong, where that athlete retires, moves clubs, whatever happens, it's gone. And then you have to rebuild from that. And that's a sharper hit to take rather than having your primary goal as a coach to be developing the best you can, the best practice you can. That's sustainable for years and years and years. So that was one of the best lessons I got out. And that was in the first day. There's obviously a lot of things that it's been going for 18 months now. It's nearly finished. But I'll cover one or two more. I'm just conscious of the time. One of the other models we used, and this is really helpful for me because it helped structure my learning a bit better. as well as my deficits a bit better. And it's called the gap analysis tool. So with the gap analysis, what you have is a present state. So that's how you are today. You have the gap, which is the space between you and your future state. So say I want to be better at teaching starts. The best way I find to do this is example of a very good practitioner. So I want to know more about start knowledge. So I see David Pease at the AIS. He gives me a lot of knowledge, and I'm here, and he's over there, and the gap between us is what I need to build on, what I need to learn. So once you identify that you have a gap between the knowledge that you want and your current position, then you can set about providing a plan to fill that gap. It doesn't have to be about technical knowledge, doesn't have to be about coaching knowledge. It can be about setting boundaries, self-management, program management, all those things, program marketing, everything that comes into it. But the way I best describe this is I was overseas at a training camp, and I had some good athletes there, and I thought I was doing pretty well with them. And one of them was doing freestyle, and he was doing bent arm freestyle. And I was there with two very, very good coaches, and I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Athlete's going to do it this way. This is the way to go. It's going to get me the best result because I know the answer. And I was just seeing it black and white. And one of the coaches came over to me and goes, that stroke's terrible. Like he's losing it there, here. And I was quite defensive. And he said, he's doing bent arm freestyle. He was 22.4, 50 freestyler. And I was like, whatever. He goes, he should switch to straight arm. And I was like, oh, that's so ridiculous. He's got a competition in 5 months. And I just thought, well, I said, yeah, okay. And I had a look. But then how he explained it and went through it, and then we tried it, and he was faster after about 5 or 6 days. And it was just these shades of grey that he could see because he was so much more attuned to that particular knowledge than me. But I couldn't see that until I was exposed to that. And this is one point. With the gap analysis, I run this all the time and set little tasks for myself to develop to get back up to that level. And it's hard. The hardest bit is when you're working by yourself in a silo, you don't encounter people with that level of knowledge day to day. You have to seek it. You have to go to places like Clearinghouse and listen to things and talk to coaches on pool deck. And sometimes the people you want from this knowledge, there's only 10 or 20 people in Australia that have that knowledge. So you've got to seek that out. And when you see these expert practitioners, you'll see, I might say, oh, his head's too high. They'll know the error, but they'll have 40 different ways of fixing it for a visual learner, where I'll have one. So it's about knowing what your shortcomings are and setting a plan to actually fix that. And that's all a gap analysis is. But I like structuring like that, listing where you are now, where you want to be, and then filling in the gaps as you need to. And as you progress and get a little bit more knowledge comparative to where you were, you start to see things in grey, not in black and white. So that was a good lesson. The last thing I'll put up, and we're 2 minutes over, but this is a good one. And this is part of the stuff that helps me get through those gap analyses. I know where I am, and I see where I want to be, and then I set they call them coaching growth challenges, and I set a challenge for me to bridge that gap. So over the last 18 months, we've done a lot of these. So what it is a self-driven activity to assist with transition from your current state to an enhanced future state. My coaching growth challenges briefly are, I read a book called Brain Rules by John Medina, and I was really poor at setting boundaries. After the first lab, I came back. I was like, I'm batching my emails. I'm only answering emails an hour on Wednesday, an hour on Friday. I'm only doing this, and I got really militant about it, and I was so efficient. And but the problem is I work at a school, and you have to answer emails, and I started getting in a bit of trouble. But because I have a 48-hour response time, and I was taking like Wednesday to next Tuesday, and people get mad apparently. But I've stuck to a few of those principles, and the thing with that is setting those boundaries. I pencil in what I need to get done for me first, then I pencil in the athletes, I pencil in my reading time, and then everything else, I've kind of a bit of flex time, so I'm not as militant with it. But it's way better because before I'd get stuck reading some article. I'd be away with the fairies for like a day, and then I wouldn't get something done, and then it'd snowball, and then I wouldn't have fuel in my car, and I was all over the place. So I was very disorganized. The second one I did this year was a load spreadsheet, like Tom showed today. Lachlan Mitchell from the QAS did that, and I started learning more how to leverage off other people. So went back to my old uni, got the nerds in the stat division to break the spreadsheet. And what happens now is instead of individually filling out the load for each kid, I drag a session into it and drops the session. And when I tick the attendance, it categorizes the load. So with my program, I've obviously got about 10 kids that train all the sessions, but then I've got another 8 that might be to 4 or 5 or 6. So to quantify load across those sessions, I just tick when they come, and then it fills out A1, A2, A3 all the way along. So we're still jigging with that, but that's doing pretty well. So that was really good. And that was a coaching growth challenge that I did to save time quantifying load within a school environment, which was quite tough. Another one was levels of targeted skill work. So I had this problem, 20 people in the squad, say 5 people I'd give an activity really well, a challenge or a technical thing. 5 would end up excellent at it, 10 would be okay, 5 wouldn't improve. And a lot of the time I'd always be like, oh, it's kids that don't try, but then they didn't put the effort in. But then I had a look, and it was my approach was too one-dimensional. It was linear. It was just visual. It was just tactile, or it was this or that. And the way I try to remedy the skill or remedy whatever happened was only approaching one style of learning, and that might have only been those 5 kids. So I started creating different levels and ways to do that. So that was just another side one. Learning environment organisation, some of those environmental constraints that Damien talked about as well. But they were those things that I really got passionate about trying to get to the next level with, and those coaching growth challenges really helped my gap analysis, so to try and progress me through. So that's just a brief snapshot of that course and how it's helped me manage coaching a lot better with less issues, I should say. So it's still not easy. You still have to take a step back, and sometimes you get drawn in. I think all of you would empathise with that. It is hard to do, but it's definitely more worthwhile trying to set up strategies to manage things, but also in terms of coaching development, set up strategies into being explicit with your development and trying to push it forward using these tools. So yeah, that's me today. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of this session. There's a couple of things we want to wrap up in, and that is first gathering from you. What did you learn today, or what was an insight for you, or what are you taking away with you? I'm not going to ask you to write it down or share it with a friend. I'm going to ask you to share it with me, with all of us. Can you throw some thoughts out there, up the back? Beautiful. We're in a unique professional situation. Absolutely. Good realisation. I do too much. I'll join you. Yes. Hey, go to the top of the class, have a look at myself, not just the athletes. Absolutely. What else? Come on. Oh, good. Your red flag trigger points that either send you up or down the continuum. Brilliant. Brilliant. I'm sure for some of us, if we can't identify them, our partners can very clearly articulate them for us, guaranteed. Any others? Yes. Oh no, you're just flicking your...
Everyone's sort of sharing the same problems.
Yes, that's what I love. I love the fact that I have not met most of you before. There's a few familiar faces, but you're still willing to share some personal stuff, let alone with strangers, let alone with your buddy next to you. I think that is fantastic, because that's what it's all about. You know, that's what coaching's about, sharing, getting ideas. But let's get a little deeper than just what's your training program. Let's get into the are you okay? And that's that checking in stuff. You know, so I guess one learning for everyone walking out of here is and I'm guessing there'd have to be 60 of us in here at least. If 60 of us are purposefully asking friends who are showing some of those red flags, are saying, are you okay? If you're saying to this person, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Just checking in, there's more chance that they'll address and get back to looking after themselves. But what happens is we see someone showing red flags and we step away. Oh, I don't know if I should say something. Or I'll chat to my friend about that person. Oh, did you see what they're doing? Oh my gosh, they're running themselves to the ground. That's not really helpful either. So, and that's what the Are You OK campaign's all about, just asking those 3 questions. Are you okay? And if we all know what that means and we can start passing that message on, we're going to make a huge difference to this profession, which I think is really cool. So thank you. If you want some ideas on who to touch base with, if you haven't got peers or you want to look at some professional support, I'll put some business cards out that you can just give me a call at swimming and I can just direct you. We've got a national network